play this. Gator. Generally well received among those who have played it, Gator is a fantastic game. I've often considered its underrated and overlooked nature attributable to the lack of physical copies available anywhere. And that is most likely because at that time, Natsume probably couldn't afford to make so many cartridges. I can barely find any material about this game online. A few German magazine scans, and a bunch of German Let's Plays, but barely anything else. Lots of German stuff. The game must have been more successful over there, but I can't even find solid evidence to support that theory either. Gator, or Shippo de Bun in Japan, is a game for the Nintendo Game Boy. In this game, you are tasked with controlling an alligator named Charlie. The goal is to defeat Dragon Warlord Basso Gila, full name, and bring peace back to the Mowberry Kingdom. In short, a story all about driving out the invaders. We could look much further into this and see some kind of political agenda, but that's something I'd rather keep for another time. Charlie is an alligator equipped with one incredibly powerful tail. This is the reason why the game is called Gator. Charlie's tail is swung to hitboxes and enemies. When powered up with these P-chips, which I'm presuming stands for power, the tail releases a sonic boom with every swipe. Other items include the hearts, which do what you expect them to. There are these coins with the letter B for bonus, which give you extra points. Last but not least is the bomb, which is by far the most useful item in the game. If used correctly, that is. The bomb will destroy all enemies on screen, but they must be on screen, not about to come onto the screen. The game consists of 5 areas. The first 3 are comprised of 4 sections. Those sections are mountains, grassland, caves, and underwater. Each of those is separated into 5 or so areas, in which you must destroy every box and uncover the key, which allows you to continue. The key will always be in the last visible box that you break. I say visible, because in each of these, shall we say, rooms, there is a single invisible box containing another random item. This one isn't required to be broken to clear the room, but it is always helpful to grab as much loot as you can. Area 1 is guarded by a giant frog, which has a predictable attack pattern and isn't much of a challenge at all. Area 2 sees a giant fish as the main boss. Starting to see a link here, the bosses are all large versions of normally quite small animals. Area 3 has a beaver and a bird, both of whom are ridiculously tough. The final area, Area 5, is home to Basso Gila, the Dragon Warlord. From the third area onwards, the difficulty spikes tremendously. What starts as a relatively enjoyable and vaguely challenging mild-mannered platformer does turn a shade or two darker, with some awful level layouts and enemy placements. It is very irritating near the end, but satisfactory when it's over. The game formula rarely changes, which is probably the weakest aspect of Gator. Because the game itself becomes quite samey and boring, the password feature is an absolute prize. Rather than having to play through the whole game in one big chunk, I'm looking at you, Super Mario Land, the password feature makes us appreciate what the Game Boy system was ultimately about. Quick bursts of gaming on the go. By playing it in smaller shots, the game is far more enjoyable. The requirement to smash every box sits well with an obsessive compulsive. And the controls are good. You know what they say, if you can't say much about the controls, then that must mean they're fine just the way they are. In between breaking boxes, and listening to the sweet swing-influenced soundtrack, you may come across hidden doors, and by hidden I mean 1 pixel out of place hidden. You have to be eagle-eyed. Entering these will take you to bonus areas. There's nothing much to them, but it adds an extra element of secrecy to the game, except now I've spoiled that for you. Really, the game shouldn't take more than an hour to complete, 2 at most. But it's the right length. I couldn't imagine sitting through a much longer game of this ilk, to be honest. While the lack of longevity may have annoyed consumers back in 1991, I don't think it would have bothered them back then. Platformers on the Game Boy were not long games, instead they encouraged replaying to improve skills and familiarise oneself with the levels. In that regard, Gator fits the bill ideally. I hate to use phrases such as an average or run-of-the-mill, so I'm going to say this. Gator is a predictable, short, fairly mellow platformer with solid control and level design. It contains many archetypes of the genre, but being early in the grand scheme of gaming, it could be seen to be bringing many of these to the table. Some things really aren't so good. I don't like the respawning enemies, but without them the game would be a lot easier. I don't like the underwater sections, but they're only really prevalent in the first 3 areas or so. It's forgivable. Overall, the game isn't at all terrible, and has password features to allow for shorter controlled gaming bursts. The general consensus, from all of just 3 sources I've managed to find, suggests that Gator is a game worthy of a lofty 75% score, which might be a little high if I'm being truthfully honest. 63% of GameFAQs users who voted on this game said that it deserves a 4 out of 5. All 3 user reviews on GameFAQs give it a solid 8 out of 10. Powerplay magazine from Germany said the game's graphics were Über der Schnittlich. That's above average. Like I said, there's so very little information available online about this game. Hopefully by having given it the spotlight, it might encourage others to check the game out and share their opinion and grow some kind of interest in the game. A cute aesthetic and mild-mannered swing-influenced soundtrack combined with an enjoyable gaming experience results in making Gator a solid recommendation to gamers, whether they be collectors, emulators or connoisseurs. However you choose to play it, giving this game a shot is a solid suggestion. If you can play it on the go, making use of the password system to restrict suffering from gaming fatigue, then you can really get the most out of this game.